Now we begin the very final session of this afternoon. I think it will be a relatively short session, but it's been a very long day, as I'm sure you'll all agree, but a very, very productive day. We are now going to see a short video of the key findings from the OCHR's flash report, which was based on a mission to Bangladesh. It was a very, very good report. And I think that it's important for the panel to hear. And this is only, what, a minute or two?
Yeah.
It's a very, very short video, actually.
Oh, okay. 1 minute?
Yeah.
Key findings?
Key findings? Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready.
Right. Let's go.
Brutal beatings, disappearances, and other serious human rights violations by Myanmar security forces in a sealed-off area north of Mong Dao in northern Rakhine State have been detailed in the report that our team has put together.
Typically, the most grave violations that we encountered, the killings, were by the security forces. One of the most striking features of the report is the sheer amount of violations that were reported to us. I must say we didn't meet a single person out of the 204 that hadn't experienced some type of violation. You know, either their house had been burned or looted, or a family member had disappeared, or a family member had been killed. Basically, we didn't encounter anyone who hadn't suffered any type of violation, which is extremely rare.
Right. There were indeed the key findings, which I think we have already heard this afternoon, but this is an official UN finding, so that is indeed something. Now we move to the final session, and this is, I think Tun Kin is going to speak on behalf of Rone San Luin, who is a Rohingya researcher and blogger, and Tun Kin is going to convey. Is Tun Kin here? Oh yeah, and Tun Kin is going to convey the latest victims' testimonies from fresh arrivals into Bangladesh, again some of which we've heard this afternoon, and the Sino-Burmese borders, as collected by Rone San Luin. So, Tun Kin, and I think you're going to speak for around 20 minutes, is that right? And then there'll be an opportunity for the panel to raise some questions before closing.
Thank you very much. Ru Nesali was able to come because of visa process is taking too long, so I'm going to speak on behalf of him. And here is his writing his testimony. Honorable dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very much honored to give my testimony here today. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Ru Nesali. I'm a blogger of the news site, Rohingya blogger, and an activist for Rohingya issues. I have been in exile from Myanmar for 16 years now. Today, I will share here the accounts of victims from Rakhine State following the attacks against Myanmar's border guard police on October 9, 2016. On that day, at about 1 a.m., I started hearing the news of an attack on border guard police outposts in Maungdaw and Rathdam townships. On October 10, 2016, at 5 a.m., military forces surrounded the hamlets of Yuahao and Saumbyai Nyo in Myotuji village tract. The villagers were trapped, locked up inside of their respective homes. Meanwhile, when some villagers tried to graze out the situation, the military saw them and raided their homes. They were all shot to death at close range after taking them out to a nearby place. Among them, one Rohingya boy was just 13 years in age. His elder and he was shot together. At noon 12 p.m., the bodies were picked up by military and taken away in their car. In the afternoon, in Chaupinsei village track in Mount Dao Township, the villagers found a mass grave with 3 Rohingya corpses. Among them is one of very old men. They were shot dead by military on 9 October night. Myanmar army forces entered into that village on October 9 in the afternoon and arrested 5 villagers without any reason. Then 3 were shot dead and buried in a mass grave. The remaining 2 were still missing. On 10th October at 12 a.m., approximately 12 of corpses were buried by military personnel in a Muslim cemetery located in the southern side of Isthmus of Kenyinde Myanmar village. After arriving with 5 cars, they firstly surrounded the compound of the cemetery. They make sure it was secure. Then they broke up the lock of the mosque gate and car dropped down the corpses at the northeast side of the cemetery, driving speedily through. Then they buried the bodies by digging a wide hole. The blood drops of the bodies was found significantly along the route where the bodies were dragged through. The bodies were packed with the bags. According to my colleagues who dug the hole the bodies were in, there were about 12 bodies in the grave. The Myanmar army started arresting and killing innocent Rohingya civilians, torching houses, robbing from Rohingyas in northern Mount Dao Township since 9 October. On October 12, the military arrested 15 innocent Rohingya civilians, including 5 children from Pawashang village, and they were later slaughtered. On October 13, 162 houses were burnt to ashes, and where more than 150 Rohingya shops were also burned to the ground, Chayobin village. In Pyongbyang hamlet located near Ngasakyu village, before torching the houses, the military Natala villagers looted valuable things and cattle. Then they torched 140 houses. The military shot dead an elderly woman while torching the houses, and they threw her into the fire. In the evening, October 13, the military entered into Sabaingun and Longdong village and fired on them with launchers. Reportedly, the houses were burned down. 5 helicopters flew over the villages for many hours, and innocent civilians were killed when military fired rocket launchers towards them. On October 14, at 12 a.m., some military personnel along with Rakhine civilians raided the market in Ngakura village tract. They looted all the goods that they found. On October 15, at least 92 civilians were brutally killed, and at least 50 from Chayobin village tract alone. On November 9, about 9 p.m., Myanmar Army and BGP entered Sindabi Middle Hamlet, Longdong village tract, and they said they want to check the house of the one particular man. They entered into his house, and when they didn't find the main man inside the house, they pulled out the wife and raped 3 daughters. The rape victims are maternal sisters. They are at 17-year-old, 21 years old, and 23-year-old. The eldest one is married. The soldiers looted some cash, about 200,000 and 8 grams of gold from a woman. On November 12th, 6:30 a.m., the military surrounded Myaotong village and then shot with launchers continuously. That caused many injuries to children and elderly Rohingya villagers, and many houses were burned down. The villagers tried moving to Yekechongkwasong village to escape the attack, but the military followed them and attacked again. The soldiers been said to have torched the remaining houses in the villages which were not destroyed in the initial attack. On 12 November 10 a.m., the military rounded Puim Pushang, Zambonya village, and did similar attack done to Myotong villages. Many innocent children and elderly were injured. Many houses were burned down. Again, the remaining houses were torched by soldiers when the villagers escaped to Yegejang Kwasong village. 12 November, 2:30 p.m., the military surrounded Yegejang Kwasong and Dajisa villages. They started non-stop shooting with launchers. In both villages, many innocent villagers were killed and injured. The soldiers torched many houses, mosques, and religious schools. As the military is continuously attacking unarmed villagers, the villagers themselves couldn't tolerate anymore, and they started trying to defend themselves by holding a stick and slingshots. At least 10 Rohingya were closely shot dead by soldiers while villagers tried to defend themselves. The villagers from Yegejang Kwasong and Dajisa were attacked again by Myanmar Air Force's airstrikes, which, when they fled to Toula village, the airstrike left many villagers killed and injured. In the evening, many Rohingya arrested while taking refuge on paddy field. The villagers from 4 villages were on the run and have no food. On 13 November, Myanmar Army BGP raided Jagongdong village. A woman told me over the phone while crying loudly that the military took all her properties and torched the houses and threw children into the fire. Another elderly woman told me security forces beat her and took all the money she had in her pocket. Then they kicked her out from house and burned down her house in front of her. On the same day, 6:30 a.m., the military and BGP entered into Yegejang Kwasong village and threatened the villagers. They told them they would be shot dead if they don't leave their homes. The houses were shot with launchers and left to burn down once the villagers left. On November 12 and 13, in just 2 days, many thousands became homeless. On 14, 8:30 a.m., a group of 150 members of military, border guard, police, BGP entered Yegejang Kwasong village. They arrested 150 villagers. Those arrested were from Yegejang Kwasong, Dajisa, Jagongdong, and Myotong. On the same day, 5 p.m., 100 soldiers and police from Myanmar military and BGP forces entered the Yeo Dajisa hamlet, were reported forcing the women and children of the village to come with them to an area in the western side of hamlet where brain is wild and remove the salt. Witnesses say the security forces then forced a woman stripped naked and beat them and push their heads into the mud. A soldier reportedly held an 18-month-old baby boy, son of Nur Muhammad, by the leg and hit the body with a large piece of wood. The boy died on the spot. The villagers told me the security forces then arrested more than 30 men. Some others were shot dead and others slaughtered by knife. On November 15 at 2 p.m., military were returning some 30 children and women and to their homes, brought them to Yegejang Kwasong South Hamlet, then locked them inside the houses. On November 18, military and border guards police surrounded Chayobi, Ngasaju, and Ushinja village, then later raided the villages. They said they need to check the houses. At the time, they raped the women if there were no men in the home. Some villagers also informed me that they heard at least 3 women screaming for help as they were raped by soldiers. On November 20, at least 50 women were raped by Myanmar military in Jagongdong village. From the information I have gathered after November 12 and 13 incidents, we estimated that at least 450 Rohingya civilians were killed. I also talked with some brave victims. The soldiers and police raped many women and the girls. In the most horrifying cases, it was reported that soldiers inserted a knife into the private parts of the women. I heard this from a few women. Once the soldiers and police came into the houses, they started plundering homes and food and household items. As a result, the people have realized they will starve. If they don't move elsewhere for food and aid were looted and destroyed. This was reported every village security forces were active in. Security forces arrested more than 600 innocent civilians whom they arbitrarily label as terrorists. Currently, the government is saying that only 8 of them died in custody due to diseases, but I believe that there were more than what the government claimed. The 8 men known to have died in custody also showed clear signs they were tortured in custody. It seems certain they died as a result. I was able to investigate the details of each of these cases from eyewitnesses. All of their families were not notified. The men were buried with the help of 3 or 5 locals. The people who attended the funeral have to give full details. At that time, the police made video records, so no one would dare describe the injuries these men sustained that could be observed by their bodies when they were buried. After arresting these men, they were first kept in BGP headquarters. Then they were moved to Maundo police station. From there, all of them were sent to the prison Butidang Township. I was informed by many locals that the detainees were being tortured inside prison and they were only getting 1 meal in a day and rice and 1 meal in a day. There were no health care for them while they were injured and vulnerable to infection. In the beginning, they were brought to Maundo District Court for their hearings regarding judgment in their cases, but later the detainees were kept in the trucks during the cases and police would go to get a paper copies of judgment. Nowadays, the authorities are not taking their detainees to the court in Maundo. Instead, they have not converted a warehouse in Butidang into a camp. They have done this to some offices at Butidang Township Administration Department as well, where they all are used as a court. In my investigation, at least 300 to 400 were sentenced to more than 20 years. They were charged with at least 4 to 5 acts and were not allowed to hire a lawyer. Their families were not allowed to meet them. According to local reports sent by my own team, more than 2,000 houses were burnt to the ground in 10 villages in northern Maundo Township. During so-called clearance operation, the situation in southern Maundo Township was calm, but people were not allowed to move from one village to another, even with permission. The villagers have not been allowed to fish since 9 October. Many hundreds of houses were demolished by border guard police at this time under the pretext that they were new constructions that were not permitted, based on old maps drawn by the now disbanded Nasaka Border Security Force. Now, although government has said clearance operation has ended, the military are still present. The accounts I have detailed are horrible, I believe, undoubtedly qualify as crimes against humanity. But yet they are only a sample. These are the crimes that have been discovered without proper investigation. We will never truly know how the extent in which Myanmar security forces violated international law. subject a vulnerable civilian population to campaign of death, terror, and starvation. Thank you for your time and for having me here today.
So thank you very much for reading Nay-San Lewin's testimony, Tunkin. Nay-San Lewin has been a real point of connection in terms of conveying the latest incidents of violence out of northern Rakhine State, and has done a superb job, I think. So thank you very much for that. Do you have any questions, the panel, in relation to that latest testimony, for example? Okay. So in that case, I think that I will draw today's session to an end. Thank you all very much for coming. It's been a very difficult day, I expect, for all of us because of what we've watched and what we've listened to. But I want to thank everybody here who has presented testimony and witness statements and expert evidence, because I hope that the panel have been given a very detailed account of what is happening in Burma, in Myanmar at the moment, both for the Kachin and for the Rohingya. We will have more testimony delivered tomorrow morning, and in the very first thing will be a summary of the indictment to be presented to the panel that we as a prosecution team will write up this evening. And then the rest of the morning will proceed, and then there will be a press conference. I think what we would hope that you all do is to tell as many people as possible about what you've heard today and about the tribunal, that it is a continuing process, and that the other thing I would really like to underline is how exciting it is that we have the Rohingya and the Kachin here together. Because in the past, the Kachin have had very few friends inside Myanmar. And I think that this is a huge development. The Rohingya have had few friends. And I think that this is a huge development in terms of building a resistance. So thank you all very much indeed for coming. There will be supper served outside at 6 o'clock, I think. Again, delivered by our Rohingya friends, and we thank them very much indeed. Lunch was delicious. I think we have a different group of chefs for the evening meal, so something more exciting to look forward to. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thank you again for all of your time and your presence.